Good morning, Malcolm. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you today?
How are you?
L'chaim on the coffee.
Yes, I came on a black coffee. Would you like one?
I'd love to have one. You can send it down the Zoom, please.
Right. Also send a banana with it.
Very healthy. Impressive. Fantastic.
Yeah. Whoops, my phone.
One more time. I missed that.
You must have sent me a message.
Yeah, I just sent the message. I'm running a bit behind schedule. What else is new? Baruch Hashem.
Yeah.
How have you been keeping? Oh, I've got to keep an eye on this. Okay. Okay, let's get started. I want to just say that lo and behold, guess what? It's a special day today. Today is a special day. What else is new? But it really is. It really is a special day. Actually quite recent. So recent that I remember, well, I don't remember, but I was born, at least I should say. I was young. I was a young boy at the time of this tremendous occasion. But on the Chabad calendar, today is very special. It is the Festival of Books. So much so that if there's ever a day you want to buy a Jewish book, today's the day to buy a Jewish book. Not only that, we're going to put on the slide here. We actually there's an international sale in the Chabad shop, which is based in New York, but Manchester has arranged free shipping service. So if you buy it on their website and you tell them you're buying it to come and be bought in Manchester, there's a free shipping service just for the next few days. I think it goes until Tuesday or Wednesday. Fantastic titles, and the website is right here, kahos.com. So if you're going to buy a Jewish book, today's the day. What's the background behind it? It really was a story of a Chabad challenge in which the family members of the previous Rebbe tried to lay claims to the library. And amazingly, the Rebbe, Rabbi Schneerson, argued that it was a question of whether the library is personal property belonging to the family versus if the Rebbe's job as a leader of Jewish people belongs to the people. And the Rebbe argued that he himself as a Rebbe belongs to the people. And if we turn the library that belonged to the Chabad Hasidic dynasty into a personal item, then the whole concept of a Hasidic master, a Hasidic Rebbe, falls apart. And therefore the Rebbe argued that it's important that we retain the holiness, so to speak, of the library. And the way to do that is to make sure that we are connected to what the library stands for, Jewish teachings. And that's why every year when it comes to the 5th day of Teves, Hey Teves, Hey is 5, Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet, Hey. So the 5th day of Teves, which is today, we celebrate our relationship with books. The people of the book is the Jewish people. And very much so, we make a big deal out of acquiring, as in owning Jewish books, and also, of course, studying Jewish books. So today, I would encourage everybody, after the shir, to log on to kehos.com. Kehos is the acronym for Karnei Holy Torah. This is the acronym right there, and it's the name of the Chabad printing press, the original one. And they're having a tremendous sale. It's a 50% discount on most titles. There's a big English selection. And as I said, the Chabad of Manchester are putting together a free shipping service. It'll take 4 to 6 weeks for the books to arrive here, but it's included in the price almost. So that's a tremendous service. But that's one of the big things that are going on this week. Another very interesting thing that's going on this week is that the end of the week will be Hey Teves. Let me just put that back on the screen in case everyone wants the website. Hey, Asara B'Teves. The 10th day of Teves is actually a fast day. And interestingly, the fast day usually never falls out on a Friday. The only exception to a fast day that can fall out on a Friday is this one, the 10th of Teves. It doesn't happen very often. This year on a Friday it'll be a fast day. We'll be coming up to Shabbos fasting. Unusual, highly unusual. One of the amazing things about this fast day is it commemorates the siege that was laid around Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, times of the first Beis Hamikdash. And the quote that we have from the Talmud is, Samach Melech Bavel. The king of Babylon, the king of Bavel, surrounded and sieged this holy city of Yerushalayim. Unfortunately, the end of that story is the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash in a different time of the year. But amazingly, Samach Melech Bavel, it means that the king of Babel sieged Jerusalem, but the choice of words that the Talmud uses, samach, actually comes from the word samach. You know, the Hebrew letter of samach is a circle. Most other letters aren't circles. They have an opening here, an opening there. Samach comes from the word of samach, as in it was surrounded. But it also in Hebrew could mean, lismoch means to rely upon or to support. And therefore there's a Hasidic teaching that tells us that on the 10th day of Teves, which is this Friday, although it was a siege and the beginning of a terrible calamity, in and of itself, the date of the 10th of Teves, which we're celebrating this week, is not a sad day per se, because actually on that date, nothing terrible had actually happened. No one was hurt. It was the beginning of a long ride downhill. But on that day itself, in the siege itself, no one had been hurt. Says the Hasidic teachings that when the siege started, it was Hashem's way of telling the people, us, please step up our game. Try and behave ourselves, because if we don't, bad things will happen. It was Hashem's way of carefully giving us a nudge, a reminder, in the hope that we would get the message. Unfortunately, we didn't get the message. But the day is a day where Hashem gives us reminders, hoping that we will be able to get the message before anything terrible happens. And that's supportive. That's constructive. And therefore, the choice of word for the siege is not just a different type of word, which is a military word or a war kind of tactic. It's a supportive word. Samach. Because Hashem is supporting us and encouraging us to take the message. So that's one of the important things that are going on this week. And of course, we have a fantastical Parshah. If there was a cliffhanger at the end of last week's Sedra, where we stopped right when the boys, the 11 tribes, don't actually know that it's Yosef who's the viceroy of Egypt. But instead they think that this Egyptian master has caught them in an act of robbery, of thievery, claiming that they have stolen his personal goblet that he uses for sorcery, and he was accusing them of stealing his own personal items, which of course was a very serious crime. And here their youngest brother Binyamin, who their father had been so worried to send down to Mitzrayim, was being led back down to Mitzrayim, to Egypt, in chains. And it was here that all the 10 other brothers accompanied him, and Yehuda, the one who had taken personal responsibility, was now stepping forth to tell Yosef his best plea bargain, in which he was going to try and negotiate somehow to get Binyamin freed. And as the story goes, he stepped forward and he says to Yosef, he doesn't know it's Yosef, he says to him, I am willing to exchange myself for my brother. I will never go home as a free man ever again. I will never see my family. I'm willing to put all aside. Just let Binyamin go instead. And he argued, I'm older, I'm stronger, I'm cleverer, I'm more experienced. It makes every bit of sense to let me exchange. All I'm asking for is that my youngest brother should be allowed to go free. And Yosef is listening, and he hears the tremendous self-sacrifice of the same brother that sold him into slavery indifferently, without batting an eye, was now willing to put his entire life, all his future, he'll never see his family again, everything he's willing to give up just in order to protect the brother of that same mother that he had so disregarded those years back. And Yosef can't hold that anymore. And his emotions overwhelming, he shouts at all his servants and all his officers, everybody get out! Nobody should be in the room, only these boys, only these Hebrews. When no one else is in the room, he spills the beans. Can't hold himself back anymore. And he says, Ani Yosef. Ani Yosef. I am Yosef. I am that brother. His father's still alive. And of course, the brothers are shocked. They don't know what to put themselves. Of course, they're extremely embarrassed and tremendous shame that they felt, realizing that they're standing in front of the very boy that they themselves sold. And here his dreams have come true. They have bowed before him. And of course, he's the one in the right, and they have acted terribly. And in their tremendous shame and shock, Yosef becomes the one who calms them down. And his famous line is that you have not sent me here. It's not because of you that I am here. Hashem has sent me here. What a righteous way at looking into the eye of the perpetrator of all his sorrows, perpetrators. And instead of having anger and hate towards them, he reminds himself and he reminds them that everything in the world is from Hashem. No one can hurt me. No one can help me. Only Hashem. Again, no one can hurt me. No one can help me. Only Hashem. What a powerful way of living. What an empowering way to look at life. And this, Yosef, the man himself, only he could say what he said. And he did. And the boys are shocked even more. And he slowly warms them up. And he says to them, you know why Hashem sent me here? Ki lemichya shulachani Hashem. Hashem has sent me here to save the entire region from famine, from starvation. And it's all part of the master plan. We can even see the benefits of Hashem's plans right now. And the boys are amazed, of course. And slowly he empowers them to go back to their father and break the news to him and encourage him to come down and visit Yosef, which is exactly what happens. They go back up to Egypt, to Israel, to Canaan, and there they gently break the news to Yaakov that actually his long lost son for 22 years he believed was dead, is actually still alive. And he's the viceroy of Mitzrayim. He's way up there, high flying. And he's still righteous. Although he's such a powerful position. And he's been away from the environment for 22 years, alone. Yet he still holds on to his traditions and his values and his morals. What a simcha! What a joy! What a nachas! And as Yaakov gets it, and together they pack up all their belongings and they travel down to Mitzrayim. And famously, the count of how many people are in Yaakov's family coming down to Mitzrayim, total a count of 70 people. It's going to be important because later we're going to see that when they came down to Mitzrayim, they were a handful of people, 70 people. By the time they left Mitzrayim, there were over 2 million people, roughly. And that is when Hashem appears to Yaakov on his way down. He says to Yaakov, don't be afraid. I will be with you in your travels down to Mitzrayim, and rest assured, your family will yet come back. The fourth generation will come back to Yisrael, and they will once again settle the Holy Land, and then it will be theirs, and they will inherit it. And Yaakov, with this promise, confidently goes down to Mitzrayim. When they come down to Mitzrayim, Yosef, in the meantime, is raking in the cash because he's got the stockpiles of food. and the entire Egypt basically becomes state-owned. Everything in the whole land is sold back to Yosef on behalf of the state, and the people are owned. They sell themselves because there's no use of them living free because they'll have nothing to live with and they'll die. And they sell their freedom to Yosef, and there's a whole arrangement in Mitzrayim. But of course, the entire region's buying food from Egypt, and Egypt becomes wealthier and wealthier and wealthier. And that's how it starts becoming more and more the empire of the entire region. It was the superpower. And Yosef was the man behind it. But Yosef didn't forget his brothers. He looked after his family. And he set them up in the most fertile area, in the area of Goshen. And there the brothers prosper in the beginning of their exile. And they do very, very well. They make it big. And all that is in Parshas Vayigash. So, Parshas Vayigash, of course, is a loaded parsha. Lots of twists and turns, tremendous lessons. We have lessons to learn from Yosef, from his answer to his brothers. We have lessons to learn from Yaakov, how he takes the news. We have lessons to learn from the story. Don't stop reading. Don't stop listening to the story of our life. How often do we think, oh, life is going haywire, it's all gone pear-shaped? And of course the answer is, don't stop. The story's not over yet. Because of course there are turns and twists in life. But Hashem has it all mapped out to the T, to the very last detail. And these are some of the many lessons we can learn from the Parsha. But today we're going to learn a lesson in crying and acting. I want to just point out that Yosef seems to be a very emotional individual. The amount of time the Torah records that Yosef breaks down crying and weeping. When he sees the brothers, he can't hold himself in. When he sees Binyamin, he can't hold himself in. When he watches the brothers owning up and taking responsibility. When he meets his father, each of these times the Torah records how Yosef wells up in tears and he breaks down crying. But at the same time, Yosef is a very, very motivated and action man. Gets stuff done. It's not sitting around weeping on the couch because he's paralyzed in tears. Not at all. Yosef is a man who acts very responsibly. At every crucial moment, he's making the right moves. And he's thinking, what's the next right thing to do? And this is the balance that we want to learn from the Yosef story, at least for today. Because all too often, the truth is, in the past few classes we've been speaking about, the emphasis is, yes, we can. Hashem has confidence in us. Hashem gives us the power to get done what we need to do. And in short, we've been learning that we can do it. We can do it. And what we're going to talk about today is that although we know we can do it, how often do we know we want to do it, but it's something stopping us from getting it done? Whether it's a diet, whether it's growing in something, in a personal growth matter, that a person sets themselves goals or would like to achieve a certain area in life. But there's always things that hold us back. And it's this point of where we know what we want to do and where I know I want to get to, but something stops me, paralyzes me, doesn't let me achieve that which I want to achieve. And today we're going to learn two Torah approaches to this type of paralysis, because basically it breaks down to two general areas. One main reason why a person might know what they want to do, but not be able to bring themselves to do it, not be able to drive themselves to do it, is when a person believes that it's not even going to be possible to actually achieve that goal. So I wish I would be able to do something, and that's a very common realization. A person realizes I need to shape up in a particular area, but until I shape up in that particular area, I feel like there's no way I can get there. If I feel it's unachievable, I don't see how my little steps that I can take right now are able to bring me there, then oftentimes it breaks me, it paralyzes me, it doesn't let me even try and even start. That's number one. So when a person doesn't think that the steps that I'm taking are going to make a difference, I wish I could be able to help out the community, but I don't think I'm actually going to make a difference. So why bother? Not only why bother, I don't feel like starting. And although I know I want to make a difference, I don't begin to make a difference because I don't think it's actually going to make any real impact. And that's a very common drawback. I mean, of course, community is an easy one, but there are things that are much closer to home. Cleaning up the house, learning a new idea, all that kind of idea. One moment, let me just get this off. 1 second. Sorry about that. Okay, so as you were saying, that's the number one thing. Being able to achieve, even though it looks like it's unachievable, and starting, even though we don't see how our baby steps will bring us there, is one general paralysis. And the other one, even all, is maybe the other way around in a sense, because when a person feels like it's so important to do this, it's so important, I don't know where to begin. I'm overwhelmed by the demand, by the need for a change. I don't even believe that I can make a difference. Unfortunately, when there are tragedies and tremendous calamities, the survivors who manage to fight, to be able to stay alive and to be able to resist, are generally the people, or often, not generally, I shouldn't generalize, but are often the people who are able to say, I need to do it. Even if it's so powerful, overwhelmingly powerful, I need to try. Because even if it doesn't make sense that I'll succeed, or it's so crucial, I'm not going to think about how crucial it is, I'm going to think about what I need to do. That is very important. In today's Parshah, we're going to learn how Yosef the Tzaddik, who went through this type of very difficult situations, very demanding, very taxing emotionally, mentally. He had tremendous challenges, and he stood up to the responsibility so strongly. So we're going to look a little bit at how the Torah teaches us the secret, the ingredients that enabled him to do exactly that. And the trick is to try and figure how we can translate those into our personal life. And doing that is relevant. It's so relevant. That's one of the lessons we can learn from this week's Parsha, and that's what we want to focus on for the next 15 minutes, 20 minutes. We want to look at how Yosef managed to keep the focus and to be able to do what he needed to do, even though it was overwhelming and it was unimaginable about how he would ever be able to change his situation. But he tried. So it starts off with a story of, at least where we're going to start off is the story of where Yosef is crying. Why are we starting from there? Because, one more time? I'm going to do the mute thing. If anyone wants to unmute at any time, please do so. The first thing we're going to look at is the fact that Yosef was crying. One of the major points where Yosef is found crying is the pasuk of where he meets his brother Binyamin, and he finally tells him, Binyamin, I'm your brother. You are my long lost brother. I haven't seen you in 22 years. And as the pasuk says, Yosef fell on his brother Binyamin's neck and wept, and Binyamin wept on his neck. And there they were, the two brothers, crying in each other's necks. They both were orphans. Their mother had passed away. Binyamin had never known his mother. She passed away in childbirth. Yosef was a very young man, maybe 9 or 10 years old, if that, when Binyamin was born, and when his mother had passed away. And they had each other. But for all those years, from when he was 17 years old until now he's a man of 30, maybe just a bit more. Here they haven't seen each other, and finally they can on each other's shoulders, and they cry their eyes out. They're weeping. But interestingly, the Gemara looks at this pasuk, and the Gemara says very interesting. Yosef fell on his brother's Binyamin's neck and wept, and Binyamin wept on his neck. Says the Talmud. Interesting idea. Joseph cried over the two temples that were destined to be in Binyamin's tribal territory, and were destined to be destroyed. The same verse continues, and Binyamin cried over the tabernacle of Shiloh, the Mishkan, that was destined to be in the tribal territory of Yosef and was destined to be destroyed. So in other words, they weren't just crying for each other. At this very monumental moment, they had a spiritual vision of the future, of the site of that each brother would house, would be the host, the holy Beis HaMikdash, the house of Hashem, but each one also saw the destruction that would soon follow, and therefore they mourned on the destruction that followed as well. I'm just going to put a map on the screen. For those of us who have the screen here, if you have a look, here is the tribal areas that are where Eretz Yisrael is. Ephraim, which is one of the sons of Yosef. Yosef had two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. Ephraim is just north of Yerushalayim. And over here in Ephraim's territory was Shiloh. Mishkan Shiloh was the house of the Mishkan for 370 years until it was destroyed by the Pelishtim, the Philistines. For 370 years, the Mishkan, the temporary home for Hashem, was right here in Ephraim's place. Years later, the Beis HaMikdash built by Shlomo HaMelech in Yerushalayim, which was on the border of Yehuda and Binyamin. The actual Beis HaMikdash was mainly in Binyamin's area, and the Mizbeach bordered onto Yehuda. So the Beis HaMikdash was in Binyamin's territory, Yerushalayim, and Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, the Beis HaMikdash was in Binyamin. So Yosef would have seen the Beis HaMikdash number 1 and Beis HaMikdash number 2, and the way each one of them was destroyed after 410 years and 420 years respectively. And Binyamin would have seen the Mishkan Shiloh that was built and then eventually destroyed in Ephraim, as in the son of Yosef's plot of land that was eventually destroyed. And it was for this, said the Gemara, that they cried. Interestingly, the Gemara points out that the Pasuk says that Yosef fell on his brother Binyamin's neck and wept, and Binyamin wept on his neck. But the words on Binyamin cried on the necks, plural, of Yosef. How many necks does a person have? Only one. So why does it say necks, plural? Al Tzavarei Binyamin in Hebrew. So of course the Talmud uses this to become the source of saying what it has to say, that Yosef cried on two necks, as in two Beis HaMikdash. How you say that in plural? Botim Mikdash is probably more correct. Whereas Binyamin cried on the one neck of Yosef because he only saw one destruction and the portion of Yosef, the Mishkan Shiloh. Interesting. The nuances of the pasuk that uses a plural expression to talk about a neck is the Talmud source, that obviously the neck here doesn't just mean the neck in its literal sense, but also implies and it alludes to the neck of the Beis HaMikdash. Now, of course, you're going to ask me, why does the neck allude to the Beis HaMikdash? What's the idea of the neck? Well, there's a beautiful another quote from the Talmud. Oh, here's the picture on the screen. Another interesting quote from the Talmud, and the Gemara here is going to tell us that actually the neck is used as a name for the Beis HaMikdash because the neck is a very crucial part of the human body. More importantly, the neck is the top of the human body. The arms, the torso, the legs, the feet, those are all also important parts of the body, but they're not the top. Whereas the neck is the top. Is it? Talmud seems to suggest it's almost the top. What's of course the top of the human body? The head. So why do we call the Beis HaMikdash a neck and not call the Beis HaMikdash the head? Or in other words, why does the Torah use the word that they cried on each other's necks to imply the house of Hashem? Should the Torah have said that they cried on each other's heads, which would be a better comparison for the Beis HaMikdash? And here is where the Hasidic teachings are going to tell us the importance of the neck, not the head.
Yeah.
Yona?
I have an idea.
Oh, let's have an idea, please.
The neck may be considered a bridge between the whole body and the head. And also, it can be considered a bridge between the Jewish people and Hashem.
Beautiful. Why do we need a bridge?
For a better connection.
Are we not connected already?
To make it visual, probably. To make it more physical. To feel. Humans need to feel and see and touch.
Tremendous, tremendous, spot on, fantastical. So the question, why does the Torah describe Yosef Yom crying in Shaz's neck? And the answer is, the Beis HaMikdash is the answer. What's the Beis HaMikdash answer? Like Yonah was just saying, here's the Midrash and Shir and Rabbah. What is the meaning of the verse? Your neck is as the Tower of David. The temple is situated at the world's peak, just as the human neck is at the high point of a person's body. Says Rashi right there, the Holy Temple is built on the high point of Binyamin's land, except that it was 23 cubits below the Eitam well, which is the peak of the mountain. David intended to build it there at the Eitam well. However, they said to David, let us build it at a little lower. For the Pasuk states in Moshe's blessings to the tribe of Binyamin about Hashem dwelling in the territory, and he dwells between his shoulders, which are lower than the head. Don't put it at the peak. That's the wrong message. Put it at the neck level, just below the head. That's what the Beis HaMikdash's job is. That's where the position is. And that's what the message of the Beis HaMikdash is. We're going to borrow Yonah just said it. First I have to say a quick l'chaim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nihya b'dvarei. L'chaim. Oh, that was water, by the way. Oh, so what are we learning? The neck seems like a simple connector, but it actualizes the complex systems of brain and heart. So just going along this idea that Yonah just explained, that we have our head, the brains, the intelligence, the control center, the nerve center of the human body. And then we have the body that actually actions all the actions. You need your arms, your legs. You got to go places. You got to do things. You got to engage things. The connection, the bridge is the neck. To most people, I mean, if you check up the dictionary, what is a neck? The neck is the connector between the head and the body. That's what the neck is. The picture on the screen is a picture of what we call flyover territory, flyover land. The parts of the country which is there to drive past. You know, you have the countryside. What's the countryside there for? You know, to drive through. You want to go and relax. You want to get from here to London, you've got to go through a bit of the countryside. You want to go up to Scotland, you've got to pass through this, that, and the other. Almost like the countryside doesn't have its own value in and of itself. It's there and it's designed to help us or to pass by in order to get them. The funny thing is that the lunch you're eating while you're driving past there was probably grown in that area. And the factories that designed the plane you're flying on were probably based in those flyover territory. These parts that are not the most important thing. Those flyover areas, those areas that are least important, so to speak, is what drives everything behind it. In other words, if were we to negate that area and just look at it as a byproduct or a unimportant, by the way kind of thing, we wouldn't have what it takes to do anything. And in a sense, Chassidus teaches us that that's exactly what the neck is. That bridge isn't just because we don't really need it, but somehow we need a bridge, so we have a bridge. The neck is one of the most important bits of everything. Certainly an idea. Those of us who are on the JLI course remember that when we spoke about, you have understanding, Chochmah and Bina. The most important part is Da'as, knowledge. Remember the story of the tree of knowledge? Where Adam and Eve ate from that tree? They were intelligent beings beforehand. They were even given a mitzvah. In other words, they had choice. They were able to choose whether or not to do good things or not good things, which is why they were held accountable for their choices. But the difference was how much it was part of them. The good and the bad. And until they ate from the tree of knowledge, bad was never a part of them. They'd never had drugs that they had to resist. They always knew they had to resist drugs, but they'd never been part of them. And then, unfortunately, they ingested badness. They were told not to, and it was an avera. It was evil to eat that tree. And they went and did an evil. Now they are what you are what you eat. They became knowledge of good and bad. Knowledge means it's part of them. Das means it's what you are. When you care about something, it's much more than knowing it. How much information do we have that makes absolutely no difference to how we behave? So at what point does what we know affect what we do? When we start to care about it. Knowledge. Da'as. Call it whatever you want. In Hebrew, it's da'as. And that da'as, that links what we know to what we do, is the most crucial part of being a mensch. How many times have we seen people who dress very piously and very frum and very righteous, or they have very high positions, and they carry tremendous titles, but in the way they behave, it's just so appalling. Because that da'as, the connection between what they know and how they behave, the bridge, the neck, isn't active enough. And that bridge is so important. It's so real. Of course, we've got to know what's right and wrong. It's not good enough, though, just to know. We have to connect. He has to become a part of us. And in Hebrew, that's da'as. And in the form of a human being, that's the neck. And what we're going to learn is the Beis Hamikdash is that. You know, Hashem exists whether we know about it or not. We can decide, we're going to debate whether God does exist or does not exist. We can do whatever we want. It's not going to change the facts. Like, all of a sudden, we were born however many years ago, and we're going to decide whether Hashem exists or not. Fantastic, yeah? We have an opinion. Who's supposed to exactly listen to us and take us seriously? Hashem's going to decide whether he exists or not based on whether we want him or not? Of course not. Hashem doesn't need us to give him validation. But that bridge, the Beis Hamikdash, is about whether we're going to behave that way or not. Whether we're going to work on the universe that we're living in and make it a godly place, live the way we were designed to do, for the purpose we were created for, or not. So a home for Hashem is not about giving Hashem credence, letting him exist. A home for Hashem is giving it expression in our life. That's what the Beis Hamikdash is about. It's about a neck. It's about a bridge. That is exactly what the Beis Hamikdash is. The Beis Hamikdash is a place where heaven and earth can meet. Not just because we want to have tea and coffee together, but because we want to bridge that tremendous difference between being selfish and letting ourselves connect to being something greater than selfish, self-centered. Instead, become a little selfless, a little more purposeful, a little bit more mission-minded, born to make a difference. And that's what the Beis Hamikdash does for us. So in a sense, when we look at the countryside and we say, you know what, thank goodness for the countryside, because that's where the stuff that makes the world turn exists. That bridge, the bridge between holiness and the reality as we know it, the bridge between the brain that controls and knows what's right and wrong into acting that way, the neck, is crucial. And that's the emphasis of a Beis Hamikdash. And that's why if we want to describe that Yosef was crying for a Beis Hamikdash, for a nerve center that made a difference, the word and the term used is neck. Let's see it inside just 2 or 3 texts. We have the text here from Melachim, from Kings, and King Solomon made the house windows broad without the narrower within. The windows of the Beis Hamikdash were designed so that light should be extreme output instead of extreme input. You know, you have bay windows, and bay windows are designed that you have windows in 3 different directions so that the sunlight can shine more and more into the house. In the Beis Hamikdash, there were bay windows inverted. where they would come 3 directions inwards, almost like the light from the Beis Hamikdash from the inside should be able to shine outwards more and more, because that's the Beis Hamikdash's mission. Not to draw light from everywhere else, but the Beis Hamikdash is about shining outwards, being a light unto the nations, making a difference to outside, bridging what would be a divine abstract reality and making it less abstract, making it tangible. That's what Yiddishkeit, that's what holiness is about, bridging that. And equally we have, here's the quote from Zicha, the holy temple's function is to fill the entire world with godly light, including, let's bring Asher in, including the most mundane and unholy place. For this reason, the temple is a high point of the world, but still not too high, so that's not detached. Not detached. Holiness cannot be detached. If it's detached, it's not a temple. For it to illuminate the world, the temple had to be lowered to the place it was meant to impact. Just as the neck, the bridge between the head and the body, needs to be near the torso to connect it with the elevated brain, making them one. That is the concept of a Beis Hamikdash, to be a neck, to be a bridge. And this is what the Beis Hamikdash is. So moving right along, the same holds true for the mini temple found inside all of us. When our neshama, our godly soul, is not aloof and removed from our little world, what is involved and integrated with the body, then we can rectify and sublimate ourselves and our surroundings, making them a temple and a dwelling for God's presence. The key to having a home for Hashem is making sure that it's not 2 separate lives. We don't have the life as we know it in the real world, and then our godly Jewish life, but instead we bridge that 2 lives, streamlined into one wholesome lifestyle, so that we're never embarrassed that our worldly friends meet our Jewish friends, our Jewish environment meets our worldly environment, because it's streamlined. We're one person, a body and a soul together. Unfortunately, a body without a soul or a soul without a body are both not living beings. The only way to be alive, a living human being, is to have them streamlined together. And the challenge is to live that way as well. That's the Beis Hamikdash. That is what a Beis Hamikdash is. And the terminology of our Parshah, it's the neck. Yosef cries on Binyamin's neck, and Binyamin cries on Yosef's neck. So this, in a sense, is what we're up to right now in the lessons. What do they have in common? And the answer, of course, is they have in common that they share as a bridge. The neck is there to share the light from the head, to bring it down into the body. And the Beis Hamikdash is there to do that in a macro way, to bring godliness, Hashem, to make him at home in this world. This is where we're up to. Right here is where we have. I just want to bring the corona into it. You have to wear a mask. We have to wear a mask. But the concept of wearing a mask is in order to be present. We are wearing a body. But the reason why we have to wear a body is not so that we get lost behind the mask, but in order to be able to engage. And oftentimes we find ourselves wearing a mask and we think that the mask is our new reality. So first of all, l'chaim, that the mask shouldn't cover us. The masks that we wear should protect us so that we are able to connect even more. Not just corona-wise. Of course, also corona-wise. But l'chaim, that we should be able to engage each other. And both parts of our life. Our godly, spiritual self. And of course, our real life should be streamlined. L'chaim to that. But here we're now ready to talk about, is it a good idea to cry? Is crying recommended by the Torah or not? I think this is a real question. Help me out. I'm asking for answers. Do we think that crying is commendable or not? Help me out. Does a strong man ever shed a tear?
Crying is פותח שערי דמעה, so the gates are open when a person is really genuine and he's doing it, and he's crying to Hashem, Hashem will open the gate.
That's one answer. Asher says crying is good. It opens the gates of heaven. Anyone else?
Yeah, well, look, if we're crying, it shows that we're remorseful for what we've done.
Crying for remorse, yes. What about crying in frustration?
Well, again, yes.
Yes, good thing.
It's a way of expressing yourself.
Interesting, very interesting. A way of expressing yourself. And I believe that Chassidus says when one wants to express themselves, like Malcolm says, but it's too intense and no words can express what needs to be expressed, then laughing or crying is the expression of what we want to express. Spot on, Malcolm. Shkoyach, thank you for that. Okay, so we now have Asher says, of course, and then Malcolm says, yes, it's an expression. Who else is saying here? Yona, speak up. Yes, if it's natural, if it comes out naturally. Give me some more words. Help me understand, Yona. Unmute. What do you mean? Help me out.
My father is vacuum cleaning, so it is noisy.
But the boys are doing not only crying, they're doing work. Tell me. It's good to cry. It's commendable. Does a strong man ever cry?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
They do.
And you can't plan it. It's not planned. It just happens.
Yona, is that what you were saying? It's not planned?
Not planned, no.
But is it a show of strength as well, crying?
Show of strength. I'm listening.
Because
Go, Yona.
In our understanding of what a true man is or a real man is, the real man does not cry. But if he cries rarely, I think it is acceptable. But if you cry for every single thing that goes wrong, it's not right.
It's not right. Hold on. You might get yourself into trouble right now. Does anyone agree with Yona?
Yeah.
You do. It's sometimes
has to
not
be
good
real
to
and
cry.
genuine. When you cry, it has to be, it happens, something you've had gone through a situation, and it's genuinely happening, and you're crying to Hashem.
So
But
if somebody is genuinely crying very often, is that good or not good?
Sorry?
Someone who cries very often, but it's genuine, is that good or not good?
yeah,
It's not so good because really Hashem wants you to be happy working Him, yeah? To work Hashem in happiness, it's better. It's like when you compare it to a server and a king.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Hold on, Jeff. Jeff was saying that it's when sometimes you have to cry. Is there any caveats in that? Is there any time where you should or you shouldn't?
well, put it this way. We're acknowledging that Hashem is the boss.
Yes.
And if we've done something and we don't agree with something, and we cry, it's like letting off steam, isn't it? And maybe if you've had a good cry, you can relax afterwards.
Oh, so that's a different thing. Sometimes we have to allow ourselves. This is devil's advocate here for a second, so don't quote me this. But sometimes we have to use a bit of weakness, even though it's not ideal, but it's a way to let off steam. But I want to suggest, I think some of us are agreeing this, it's not a weakness to cry just to get past as a coping mechanism. I think, Malcolm, you're saying more than that. I think you're saying it's not just because, we have weaknesses, so you've got to let off steam. Sometimes it's the right thing to do to cry.
Yeah.
And here I want to tell you, Yosef HaTzadik.
Wait a second.
Please, Yona, I'm listening.
Right.
Yona, go ahead.
I just want to say, so if you cry because it is something inside you, it is a true emotion, genuine.
Yes.
And you are crying. Yes, please go ahead. But if you are crying as some kind of a mechanism, I don't know, you need to eat 3 times a day, so you're eating like a robot. Here is the same. You need to cry to let off steam, so you cry. No, I disagree with this.
No, okay. I think we agree with that. We're not saying one has to pinch yourself or hit yourself until you start crying. No. We're not saying go cry, but if a person feels intense emotion, and it's natural, as we've said here, but also it's something that is very real, painful, then it's the right thing to do to cry. David HaMelech cried. Yosef, our hero of our story, also cried. But what we want to learn is that there's actually a time to cry, and there's a time not to cry. Even if it's intense emotions, it's still not the entire barometer. I don't know if you can say this, but there are times, even when the emotions are extremely intense, we are expected or encouraged to control that emotion and not let ourselves cry. Sometimes we're told, don't control, don't hold yourself back, be honest, allow yourself to cry. And we're looking for, when do we say that we should get on top of our game, and just like sometimes we don't act out on our impulse for other things, sometimes the right thing to do is control the cry. At other times we say, no, the right thing to do now is to have a good cry. Let me just open this chat. Crying is a reaction, correct? You need to act, but sometimes reactions are not necessarily okay. Sometimes reactions are okay. Sometimes our reactions have to be controlled. So the fact that it's natural is not enough of an okay, of a hechsher. And here we're going to learn from Yosef. Yosef cried on his brother's shoulder, and Binyamin cried on his shoulder. Interesting. They didn't cry on, not shoulder, the word was neck. Yosef cried on his brother's necks, and his brother cried on his neck. Now that we've explained that the neck isn't just an extreme emotion, but the neck is crying for the destruction of necks, of bridges, of Beis HaMikdash, which in one sense is the actual destruction, but also the fact that they misbehaved and they stopped acting on the bridge. They start living up to that bridge. They weren't mentioned. They didn't allow the neshama to shine through to the body, which is why they lost their rights to the Beis HaMikdash. So each one cried on each other's necks. But according to the Talmud, crying on someone else's neck means you're crying for someone else's destruction. Why did they not cry about their own destruction? Why didn't Yosef not cry about his own destruction? You know what the answer is? If you can do something about it, it's not a time to cry. If something needs to get done, then one has to strengthen oneself and hold oneself back from crying and instead focus on doing. But when it comes to the point where it's no longer in my hands and there's nothing else I can do, then one should cry. Because as we've said here, crying is actually the sign of strength. And the Torah calls it not just a sign of strength because I'm not afraid or embarrassed to show emotion, much more than that. Why is crying? Maybe it'd be selfish to cry for oneself. Hold on one second. Crying is a sign of strength because it's a sign of faith. Why is crying a sign of faith? So there's a couple of quotes which we're not going to read right now. We should have read that crying is a demonstration that I believe that Hashem is listening. A Yiddish should cry. When Yosef cried, when David HaMelech cried in his terrible pain, when all the tzaddikim and our righteous heroes cried in pain, they cried because they knew that Hashem would listen. Yet, there's a time to cry, but there's a time for action. And Yosef knew that there are emotional, natural, normal reactions, but those reactions need to be controlled. Almost robotic. Not robotic, but robotic-like. I will decide when I will give my emotion expression and when I will not. How will I decide? If I need to do something about this, I need to make sure that I do the next right thing. And if the next right thing means don't cry, but instead get up and control my emotion and engage Potiphar, or engage the taskmaster, or engage Pharaoh, or engage whoever it is, I don't give myself space to cry. But now that he meets Binyamin, and he sees that Binyamin has a personal challenge, that his descendants are going to grow up, and generations to come, things are going to go wrong. But Yosef, on his part, can't help Binyamin. He can only pray for him. He can only care for him, empathize with him. and cry and daven for him. Now's the time to cry. So long as there's an emotional action, an action point that is the next right thing to do, crying will paralyze me. And although it feels good and it feels right to empathize and to care, but it's the wrong action point. And therefore it's not okay. And Yosef doesn't cry for his own Beis HaMikdash, because for his own Beis HaMikdash, he needs to do something about it. He needs to make sure that his children get the best upbringing so that they can bring up their children. And they can bring up their children for the best possible way to be able to change history, future history, history that's going to be made, to create history in a better way. When it's my job, when it's my personal responsibility, it's not about crying. It's about doing the next right thing. But when it's something that's not an action point, in other words, I come to the realization that right now there's nothing I can do. Now crying is the next right move, because crying is praying. Sometimes crying is part of action. Sometimes crying is part of action. That's when it's the right time to cry. But if the action point that's necessary is not crying, then it's not the right thing to do to cry. So to answer the question, does a strong man cry? Yes, but the strong man decides when to cry. Decides when to cry. Yosef HaTzadik empowers us to know that our emotions are extremely powerful, but keep them in control. Decide which emotion to allow to be expressed. We've learned two tremendous lessons. One tremendous lesson is the neck lesson. That when we engage challenging situations, we should know that action must be driven by our mind. The brain has to be in control of the body, and that's the bridge called the neck, the Beis HaMikdash. And Yosef, when he's going to cry for his brother, will cry on the neck. But also we learn that crying is only appropriate when it's the next right thing to do. But if there's something else that's the next right thing to do, crying is inappropriate. What a powerful way of engaging every situation. You know what's amazing about this lesson? We can use it. It's a tool in our toolbox that we can whip out at every situation. It could be anywhere. It could be at work. It could be at home. It could be shopping. Should I allow myself to be emotional and to allow myself to let my emotions engage, to empathize? And the answer is, it depends. Is that the next best thing to do? Then absolutely yes. If this is the bridge between what my mind knows is right and acting, then for sure go down that route. But if it's not, then my mind will control, will bridge down into the action, and I will behave a different way. Such a practical way of living life. Yosef HaTzadik, he went through the ringer and more, and the rest. This was his guiding light. That Hashem has gifted me with the ability to do things, that's what I'm going to do. When Hashem has given me a situation and I have no idea what needs to be done, then I can daven. And I can sit back or not sit back and empathize and allow my emotions to overwhelm me. Because that's also an action point. Amazing. We can take some questions. And I want to first wish everyone a wonderful week. Thank you for joining. I just want to say, we'll do this again. 1 second. How do I get back to the beginning of the slideshow? I want to just say today on the Jewish calendar is a very important date. It is the festival of the Yom Tov of books, of Sfarim. And we have today a tremendous sale, 50% off of most titles in the Chabad Kahos library. And Manchester has arranged for free shipping. Kahos.com, log on to the website, have a browse around, a whole selection of English titles, lots of Russian and other titles, and the shipping is being arranged. Just book in. You're going to Great Britain, Manchester, and select the shipping option to be free shipping to Manchester, and it should be arriving here within 4 to 6 weeks. But buy yourself books, Jewish books, books that will enable, empower you and your library and your home to make it a Jewish place. Today is Hey Tevis, the Yom Tov Festival of Books. Thank you for joining. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to please ask. Chaim.
But for what you've been saying,
Yes.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care, Jeff.
Right.
Call to go on, welcome.
we're all being put on earth for a purpose, whatever it is.
Correct.
A mixture of good people, bad people, people willing to do things, people who won't.
We're hearing a little bit what you're saying. At least I am. Say it again.
Yeah, I said we're all here for a purpose. Now, some people are very good people. Some people aren't so good. You get really bad people, but we've all been put here for some reason, whatever it is. Hashem knows the reason, we don't.
Correct. But Hashem tells us what He wants us to do. He gave us a whole Torah. And that's Hashem's message to us, telling us what He's expecting from us and what He wants from us. So we kind of do know what our mission is a little bit.
Right. I agree in one way what you're saying. But now then, I've been taught as a youngster that when you go to sleep at night, the soul leaves the body and comes back when you awake.
Partially.
So if the soul is leaving the body, why doesn't the soul come back as a better soul? So if you're doing something wrong, it'll make you do something right.
The soul, unfortunately, doesn't always get the final say. The way Hashem has designed it is that we have impulses that distract us. And ever since the tree of knowledge, that is part of us. We have dual personality.
That's
so
me.
We're all bipolar. Our neshama says, do the right thing. And then a voice which is not outside of me, which is part of me, says, don't do the right thing. Go and have fun. Go and enjoy yourself. It's not somebody else, it's me. If I say I have cravings for whatever, it's not somebody else who has cravings, it's me. But I also want to do the right thing. That's not someone else, that's me. So which is the real me? Will the real me please stand up? Well, they're both me. They are both me. That is the complexity of life. So the neshama helps us make the right choice for this tremendous opposition. So when we are asleep, we're less productive because our neshama isn't engaged. When we wake up, the neshama gives it its best bash. But if we've been feeding and helping out the other side, the other team, we're in for trouble. We're in for trouble. And that's the nature of our challenge.
So we have to learn to behave.
We have to practice behave. We have to practice, and the more we practice, the better we'll get. What's important is that we don't measure whether we should start or not based on our expectation of success. No. We just do the next right thing. So important. Just do the next right thing. Even if we don't expect to become a perfect being. Just do the next right thing. And that will be practice. And as we practice more and more, we'll get better and better at it. But that's not the equation. The equation is what's the next right thing to do? And that way we control our emotions. We decide rather than our emotions running wild. Have we learned something today?
Yes, could you send me the recording, please?
Believe that, you know what? It's right here on the top, I think. Maybe not. It's here. You see where it says live on the top on YouTube?
Live?
Maybe not. Maybe it's on
Yes,
here.
No.
It's a red box that says live. Okay. I'll send it to you right now.
Let's have a look. No.
No, let me send it to you
Well,
right
you
now
have
as a
to go
WhatsApp
in-
because otherwise I'm going to forget.
On WhatsApp, yeah.
Here we go. Ready, steady, get it, go. Okay. Our brichas koinim, and then we're going to run. Have a wonderful week, everybody. Don't forget to buy a sefer. Buy some Torah books. In any language you want. Just make a bridge.
Rabbi.
Have a good week, everybody. Thank you for joining.
We got quickly
Mendel,
1 minute
are
to
you-
ask.
Please.
So I wanted to clarify that point. You mentioned the main point. We cry if the emotions, you don't cry, but when he feels that it's right, if you cry. So I've lost you a bit there. What was the main
The
point?
answer is we have to decide when it's the right thing to do to cry. In other words, your mind has to say, you know what, right now is the right time to cry. Not every time it feels like crying, it becomes the right thing to cry. But when we
Yeah, of
know it
course.
to be the right thing to do, then it's the right thing to do. In other
Yeah.
words, we shouldn't let the mind lose control. The mind should say, now is the right time to cry.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
We're on a mission.
Baruch
We're on a
Hashem,
mission for
Chazak Baruch.
success. The winning team. Off we go. Have a wonderful week, everybody.
שבוע טוב ומבורך, בשורות טובות.
Yoina, we're waiting to see you again in person.
Yes, coming soon.
Very
Mid-January.
Looking forward. Take care, everybody.